all, welcome everyone to the gallery. A lot of new folks here, and I am so happy to say hello to you. And if I haven't met you yet, please let's do so after this what we've got going on today. I don't even know what to call this. It's something else. I'm excited. But just a few house notes. We are in the midst of our America at 250. We thought it best to celebrate America where we are right now, or maybe show America where we are right now, and that's who's on the walls. 2 Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonists with quite a pen and quite an acerbic wit. And these are folks who do, I keep telling people this because it's so important, they do what we don't want to do. They read this crap, they listen to it, they pay attention to all the news such as it is, and all the, various iterations coming from everyone, all the truth that is being told that's not truth. And then they somehow have to turn around the next day, draw it for us with serious commentary. And that's a talent that is just remarkable. First of all, just putting up with this junk, because it's hard for us to listen to it every day. They do, they're tuned in, and they write commentary. So if you want to look at their websites, they're wonderful, and I encourage you to do so. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, what's coming up? Our next gig is all the way back to July, right? And it's a really interesting Vietnam story by Robert Brigham from Vassar College now, who's written a book, a memoir, so to speak, of his, it's about Vietnam and the United States, and it's part of our lived history. So without going into that too much, I will now say thank you very much for coming.
Where I come from, migration is not just ambition. It's a strategy. It's survival. Families make a quiet decision. If one child can leave, that child can make a change for everyone. I was that child. My parents came from very little. When my father earned a scholarship to study in the United States in the 70s, it wasn't just an opportunity. It was a lifeline. My mother joined him, working behind the scenes while he studied. Together, they built a future they hadn't been given. That journey eventually took us to Liberia in the 80s. And even there, the future wasn't guaranteed. We were living in Liberia when the Civil War broke out. And overnight, everything disappeared. We left everything behind and became dependent on relatives who had little, but made room anyway. That's what shaped me. Not just resilience, but the understanding that stability is fragile, that opportunities can vanish, that sometimes your entire future depends on systems you don't control. So when I arrived at Howard University in 1997, I carried all of that with me. I wasn't just a freshman. I was a 4.0 student with a responsibility to succeed, to stay, to make it worth everything my family had invested. And then the plan collapsed. I sat in my uncle's office, my parents on the phone, as they argued about how I would stay in school. The tuition support we had counted on was gone. And my uncle said, she will need to return home. Return home. That's a simple phrase, but for immigrants, carries a lot of weight. Because going back doesn't just mean changing plans. It can mean losing status, losing ground, losing the very reason you came. That's how I ended up outside the school administrator's office, hungry, exhausted, waiting. It was almost 6 p.m. when she finally walked out. She looked at me and said, "You're still here?" So I asked her for what I needed, a chance to stay. I told her I needed tuition assistance to finish my time at Howard and an on-campus job so I could support myself. She listened, she acted, and she gave me what I needed most, the ability to stay. My path forward was restored, tuition covered, and a work-study position in the executive vice president's office. The system that had felt so fragile, so uncertain, somehow made room for me because one person chose to say yes. I graduated from Howard with honors, supported and able to keep moving forward. But more than that, I carried forward a deeper understanding that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. Today, I'm a wife and a mother of 3, working at the American Immigration Council. And my immigration story is not separate from my work. It is the reason for it. Because I know what it means when the future depends on access, policy, and whether someone is willing to see you. And I know this, behind every immigrant story is not just resilience, but risk and necessity. Not just ambition, but sacrifice. Sometimes the difference between starting over and moving forward comes down to one decision, one moment, one person willing to say yes.
Thank you.
Every time I left jail in New Jersey after visiting my clients in ICE detention, I felt ill. I could step out into the sunlight and drive away. They couldn't. As a newly minted attorney at a public defender's office in the Bronx, representing people detained by ICE, I quickly saw how this country, which holds so much promise for so many, could also be deeply cruel. Every week, I spoke to spouses and children breaking the news that their loved ones would be deported from behind the curtain of detention. Often, there was nothing we could do. There would be no chance for proper goodbyes. Even when we received good news, securing a client's release or winning a removal case, it couldn't undo the violence of the process, the racism and classism of the system that ensnared so many of our clients. Inside, time moved differently for people. A guard's bad mood could be catastrophic. Privacy didn't exist. And unlike even the most punitive criminal sentences, immigration detention had no clear endpoint, no release date circled in red, only waiting and the slow erosion of hope. For most of my clients, detention came as a shock. I watched people deteriorate under anxiety, sleeplessness, and the panic of not knowing if they would ever get to be with their families again. The experience of one client from back in 2017 stays with me. Jamila was in her 30s. She had her green card for decades. and she was a single mother with 2 young US citizen children. She was also a survivor of violent crime. Her partner had come home one afternoon, 2 months after their baby had been born, and stabbed her repeatedly in the stomach, landing her in the ICU and him in prison. She had been traveling back to the United States on her green card after visiting family when border officials discovered 2 misdemeanors from 20 years before. They arrested her. I remember her desperation the first time I met her. She needed to get back to her kids. She simply couldn't believe that she was separated from them because of 2 incidents of shoplifting from when she had been a teenager. She was now a devoted mother, responsible for her family's well-being. Now she was incarcerated indefinitely. We filed everything we could for Jamila. We asked ICE to release her, showing that her kids, including one with special needs, were suffering without her. We had letters from her employers talking about what a wonderful employee she was, showed that she had been out of trouble for decades and cooperated with law enforcement. We filed motions for release and to terminate in immigration court. Everything was denied. Then we filed a habeas petition in federal court. Finally, after more than 4 months, Jamila was released from ICE detention. In the habeas decision, the federal judge wrote, "The notion that it was good public policy, let alone a good use of the public fisc, to put petitioner, our client Jamila, in jail at all, let alone for 4 months, is frightening and beyond absurd." Though gratifying, those words could not restore the months that Jamila had lost, nor undo the trauma that her children had endured. The system had already exacted its pound of flesh. My professional life is different now. I still do immigration work, but one step removed from the individual suffering I used to witness every day. I work on impact litigation, challenging government policies, trying to get ICE to follow the law and the Constitution. I'm not the person that I was back then either, when I met Jamila. I have 2 young children now who need me, just as Jamila's children needed her. Now I understand the desperation that Jamila felt, that thousands of parents currently separated from their children feel. Today, every day brings new stories. Families destroyed, children denied medical care, unprecedented numbers of people dying in ICE custody. But Jamila's case reminds me that people have power. She and her family, like so many families today, fought back. They bear the scars, but together we triumphed over the system that tried to tear them apart. That hope is still alive. Communities are organizing to protect their neighbors and to protest inhumane detention centers. Judges are recognizing that what is happening is illegal and wrong. Some parents have returned to their children. And if enough of us insist on the humanity of all the people targeted by these systems, we can move closer to a future where no one is treated with cruelty and contempt.
I didn't even let my husband.
Show mercy.
Well, tonight we have a remarkable opportunity to discuss a lot of what we just heard and a whole lot more with 2 top experts in the United States. To my immediate right is Amy Peck, and she is an immigration lawyer who has, she's one of these people who trains the trainer. She really knows her stuff. And she's tops in the country and has accolade after accolade, professional accolade. Her most recent was in the past 7 days, I believe, you were awarded the President's award at the don't even tell me, the American Immigration Lawyers Association.
Got it. Woo!
Was that knowing acronyms in Washington? Yes, and Amy and I are friends, and we have many friends in the audience who are just know of her great work. But I wanted to share it here because there are many, many strategies that we can learn, and very common sense things, and then things we never even thought of that I believe we're going to have takeaways tonight. And we need them, because this is a huge, huge social, political, economic sore on America, how we treat immigration. Amy, I'm going to turn it to you. Give her your mic. Yeah, you're sharing. I'm not sharing.
And to the right of me is Jeremy Robbins, who is the executive director of the American Immigration Council. And you heard a little bit about it with the two speakers before. And Jeremy is, been around a long time in this space. He's amazing. So we'll be talking a little bit more about the council today.
Great. We're gonna talk about what they do and why they do it. And we're gonna get as granular as we like, because these are folks who know the granular, but also understand what the numbers mean. So we've heard horrible numbers about the record numbers of people who are in detention. Let's start with detention now. And tell us, if you would, and the two of you, and you gotta share a mic, I'm sorry, but tell us about just some of the stories that you've experienced that are sort of emblematic of what tens of thousands of people are going through, and what kind of access do they have to legal help?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll tell you about 3 of our clients who I'll spoil the ending and tell you they were just released. And I won't use their names for all sorts of reasons that'll be obvious, but they're 3 LGBTQ identifying Iranian men. They were arrested in Iran by the morality police for the crime of being gay. They fled. They came to the border, they waited, they came in, and they made a claim for asylum, and they were immediately thrown into prison, because that's how our immigration system works. In the last 18 months, the number of people that we are keeping in prison in our immigration system who have never had any touch whatsoever with the criminal justice system has increased by 2,400%. The number of people, it used to be the vast minority of people we picked up had never had any criminal allegation against them. Now it is becoming the majority, because everyone who is getting stopped for any traffic violation for anything is getting detained. Most of those people are trying to navigate our immigration system completely alone. It is extremely hard to get a lawyer. Many people don't have money. There are not nearly enough immigration lawyers. Immigration law is just about the most complex area of law there is, and we're asking people who don't know our legal system, likely don't speak the language, to be able to know how to navigate it. All 3 men had what is essentially an open and shut asylum claim. Asylum says that if you come to our borders and you have a well-founded fear of persecution based on some identity, certain identities, that you can get asylum. And that's been the law for now 46 years in this country. They tried to navigate the system alone, and they lost. And they were slated to be deported. Fortunately, they found us. We have a hotline they called the hotline. We found them, and we were furiously working to get their cases reopened. One of them we got from a judge and were able to stop, but there was a deportation flight on a Sunday, and we couldn't get in front of a judge, and we're trying furiously, and we thought our clients were going to do it.
Where do they find the number?
What's that?
You said you had a
Yeah, so we started a hotline so people in detention can call it. So it is in immigration detention centers. That number is passed around. It is specifically, we have a hotline for people who are LGBTQ identifying because there was a huge need. And we noticed that 20% of our clients identified that way. And so we built a whole infrastructure around it.
Staggering, 20%.
Yeah, so it's a
Wow.
huge number.
Wow.
So the deportation flight left on Sunday, and they weren't on it. And it turned out they weren't on it, and this you can only script, because the place that they were being held was under lockdown because there was a measles outbreak, because we no longer believe in vaccines. It gave us a few more
Where are they
days.
being held?
I think I can't remember. Do you remember which? They were in one of the Texas facilities.
Yeah.
I should say that in the Texas facilities, which are some of the most deadly places in detention, last year was the deadliest year in detention in decades. It was more deadly than the 4 years combined to be in ICE custody. I remind you that many, if not most, of the people in ICE custody have committed no crimes. This year's on pace to smash that record. There were 6 deaths in January alone. But they weren't on the flight, so we had some more time. And thankfully, we were able to get in front of a judge, and they've all been released. Mo Kantner, one of them was being held in San Diego, the other was in Texas. Mo Kantner was able to from our team was able to pick him up at the detention center, spend the night in her house, put him on the flight the next day, and now they're back together, fighting the rest of their case.
Okay, so
alone.
this is extraordinary. What you just said in the last sentence. Someone from your organization got in a car, obviously traveled some distance, picked up these folks, took them to their house. Is that like how we work these days?
The lack of resources now is staggering, right? And so, especially for people who don't have money to pay for it. And so, yeah, this is an all hands on deck moment. And the staff, I mean, you saw 2 of the staff speak tonight. The people who come to this work because they believe it, because they're passionate about it.
Let me ask you, and I am a little late. Akosua Meyers over here gave us the first most beautiful story, and part of the story is, she's sitting there absolutely flipped out about maybe having to go back. And what resources do university kids or other young folks who have some sort of educational context and they're being threatened? Share.
And they're being threatened?
By deportation or other. I mean, are you reaching into those communities?
Yeah,
sorry.
So I can speak specifically for what we're doing, and then I can talk broadly about the movement. There is a huge lack of funding and support. So we just took on a new project with the City University of New York. The City University of New York is actually 22 different universities. Historically, they are the thing that brings more people into the middle class than anything else in this country. It is almost all the students are first generation college students, and a huge portion of them are immigrants. It used to be that their concerns were different than people's concerns. It no longer is, and more students are getting caught up in the mass deportation regime. So we recently just started a new project so that we can represent every single one of the City University of New York students who are caught up in that process. That is infrastructure that did not exist in New York, and it does not exist around the country. Truthfully, because there is not funding for it or really capacity for it, it won't exist until we have to build a whole new infrastructure around it.
Okay, now let's bring Amy in, and Amy, I want to ask you, Suchi, is it Mathur? Suchi, is that how you pronounce it? Beautiful. Brought us such eloquence and beautiful points. One of them, these visits are so trying, emotionally trying and exhausting physically. And what percentage of people in custody are visited by these emotionally exhausted, big travelers? Seriously, I mean, how many attorneys are there out there fanning out there to help?
Well, not enough, but Jeremy's gonna have that stat too.
Yeah. So if you just think about the immigration bar generally, there are 18,000 members of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, which is not a large number covering the whole country. When you think about pro bono attorneys, people who are willing to work for free, which is what most of these people need, the numbers are staggeringly low. We lead something called the Immigration Justice Campaign, where we have about 20,000 volunteers that are lawyers, paralegals, interpreters, and we can place some cases with them, but it's woefully interesting. You think of there right now, there at its peak earlier this year, there were 73,000 immigrants in detention on a given day. It's gone down a little bit over the last couple of months. There simply aren't, and most detention centers are located in very rural, off-the-grid places. On purpose, where there is no, whether it's paid or pro bono, ability of attorneys to get there. They make it very hard to visit. If you call, these facilities almost all are run by private prisons. Right now they're building these sort of soft-sided tent facilities. They're converting Amazon warehouses. In many of them, if you want to talk to your client, they have to take the phone call like right next to the guard station. Sometimes you can't bring in computers. So it's very, very hard either to find a lawyer or then to get representation.
And the life there, as Suchi said earlier, is insufferable. It's just, it's in some ways torturous when you talk about lights on constantly and a buzz and a constant.
Yeah, the New York Times has done some absolutely fabulous video journalism work, and they did an amazing piece, which we should send around, but you can search for it. It was 3 green card holders, so people who were here legally, came back in the country and were thrown in detention. One of them is an Egyptian man who got asylum here. He got asylum because he was tortured in prison in Egypt. And he says, look, like, here was my reality. I was in a room with dozens of people, there were bathrooms in the corner, the lights never went out. I was tortured in prisons in Egypt, and ICE detention was worse.
Wow.
And that's the reality of what this situation is. For people who are coming here, who look, I mean, I'll say my grandmother was born in a town in Ukraine. We're Jewish, and it was right ahead of pogroms that were sweeping the area. They conscripted Jewish men for 25 years into the military in an incredibly horrible life, and they fled. And they fled because they were fleeing for their lives ahead of pogroms, but they kept going looking for a better life. They look a lot like the people who are showing up at our border today. She came here with nothing. At 20, her fiance died. She didn't graduate high school. She had 3 kids, then her husband died. She went through college at night, struggled, and all 3 of her kids got graduate degrees. Now I get to live this amazing American life. The reality today is that the door would be closed to her. There's no way for her to come here, and if she did, she would be put in one of these immigration detention centers.
Right, let me ask Amy, talk about the breadth of what you do, and give us a sense of the challenges. The legal challenges are beyond at least my comprehension. But talk to us what you stumble into every day. Today you had an interesting decision by a court. Tell us what's going on.
The thing that I think is really important to understand now is how the landscape changes so constantly, and it's purposefully changing in a way that we can't keep up. And it's you think of our nation as a rule of law. We're law-based, but it is no longer the case that the rule of law applies. It does sometimes, it does if you have a good enough lawyer, but it doesn't always apply because they're changing things so quickly.
Give us an example.
An example is, last night, here's your list. Refugees. So we are a country of immigrants, and now, it used to be you could come here as a refugee and you could make a life. Now the only refugees allowed are white South Afrikaners.
And they get their goodie bags too.
Yeah.
Have you seen that goodie bag they get?
The Supreme Court today made a decision that there's no right to asylum if you're seeking admission at the border. You have to be inside the US. Let's see.
And what does that mean?
That means that most people are no longer going to be eligible to come here. How much?
Oh, it's gonna be the dissent.
Oh, well, I'm gonna take off the list and then we'll read it. The fact, Minneapolis, what happened in Minneapolis, I've had a long career, over 30 years, jaw-dropping what happened in Minneapolis. ICE officers on the street scanning, are you brown enough? I'm picking you up. I had a US citizen client driving her Hispanic colleague to work because he was too scared to drive. They were stopped on the street. She refused to roll her window down and allow them to talk. They bashed the window in. They arrested both of them, took them into the place where they were holding everybody, and they put him over there with the brown people. They put her over with the US citizens. And they said, we're arresting you for transporting illegal aliens. She was like, what are you talking about? We're driving to work. After about 3 hours, she was approached by an ICE officer who said, you may now leave. She goes, what do you mean? You haven't talked, you didn't do anything. You made me stand over there. You didn't interview me. I learned from my friend Lauren here that that's called an unarrest. It's illegal. FBI can't do that. ICE is allowed to arrest you and unarrest you, and there's no record. She couldn't prove what they did to her. Now, her colleague was not so fortunate. Her colleague was in for 48 hours and was later released because he was in fact lawfully here. But they had arrest numbers to meet. There were quotas. Now remember, in that regime, it was like, we are gonna arrest 1,000 people a day or whatever it was. And that was the goal. That was the law priority, not the merits. What is this country? That is not how we think of our country, as meeting a quota for what? So that happened. And in my career, I've never seen anything like that. Happened in LA as well, where they're walking around picking people up. You look brown, we're gonna pick you up and we're gonna figure it out later. I had a Cuban client, he's been here 40 years, lawfully. He did not yet have a green card, but he was lawfully here, driving his wife to chemo in LA. He was brown, they pulled him over, they were meeting a quota, he got put into detention. He was released about 3 weeks later. But what are the law enforcement goals? Number 1, quota. Number 2, fill in that bed, and guess who wins there? The private contractors. I can't even wrap my head around it. All right, other goals here, stops based on looks. That's something I never thought I would see in my career. The immigration judges are not Article 3 judges. What does that mean? That means they work for Department of Justice.
That means a lot.
That means that their boss basically is the president, and they are told what to do, essentially, if they're approving too many asylum cases, if they're approving releasing too many people, they get in trouble, they get fired, and they are being fired.
So what percentage of cases that you're working on now do you have confidence will have some sort of positive resolution?
What kind of, I used to
I'm
do
talking straight up.
deportment, well, we do business cases now. This is another, so if you have a business and you are supporting a worker for a business visa, lawfully coming, these are usually very specialized. What we saw during Trump 1 was they kept changing the rules. People have been here for years and years, educated people, usually in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. They changed the rules. We had a denial yesterday on a case. They've been here for 12 years and lawfully, and those visas have been renewed, and suddenly they said, oh, we don't think this degree meets the criteria for this visa type. we're obviously, gonna
There's
strategize
a lot
around
of
that.
rearranging the rules
Yes.
midway.
Yes, and it's complete BS. It is, they're just making stuff up. And of course, the clients are like, what's happening? And it puts this entire family in disruption.
What has happened to caseloads? What has happened to your caseload? There are a lot of immigration and former immigration folks. I know you, but, what's happened? Is it exponential? Can you retire anytime soon?
Well, every case is harder now because the rules don't apply, so you have to try to constantly strategize around what do we think they're going to do with a made-up rule, right? So again, rule of law, it's there, but what are they gonna make up? So you're constantly trying to think ahead. So every case is harder, but let's talk about yours.
Yeah, I'll take just about caseloads generally. So there are millions of backlogged cases. And one of the ways that when things happen in this administration is their sort of view of it is one, we can get rid of those by just dismissing all of them or trying to make people not have justice. So when you think about how much the world has changed, there's been sort of this death by 1,000 cuts. And so it started with who's allowed to get into court, who's allowed to get stopped, who's allowed to appeal, who's at every single level, there's been an attempt to subvert the rule of law. And so I'll tell you what that means in some of the individual ones. Who's allowed to get stopped? Now, after the Supreme Court's shadow docket decision, someone who has brown skin, who speaks with an accent and happens to be near somewhere where immigrants might work, can get stopped. They can't get arrested, but they can get stopped to ask their immigration status. Well, it's okay, what does that mean if you're not getting arrested? The administration has taken the position that they can handcuff you, move you to a different location to verify your information then. And that's not an arrest. For an arrest, you need probable cause, and you need a warrant. Immigration, it's very Kafkaesque. When you say words like judges and warrants, words that have meaning in the English language, they don't have meaning that you think they mean in immigration. An immigration judge is not a judge. An immigration judge is a Department of Justice employee. And so when the president came in, he fired all the ones who aren't giving the decisions they like, which extended the caseloads. He put many military judges who have no understanding of immigration law in charge so that they could quickly get rid of cases. They then went into court and they started asking the judge to dismiss cases, which seems nice for a judge and for a defendant. And when you walk out the door, they would re-arrest you and take the position that you don't need to get into court at all. We could put you into expedited removal so you get less rights. For in the field, when they're stopping people, you need a warrant. Even in the before times, a warrant wasn't a real warrant the way you think of it.
Before times.
The way you think of a warrant.
Sanity.
It's insanity. You think you go in front of a judge and you say, great, I want to stop Amy Peck, and you give the information and they write a warrant. That is not what typically happens in immigration, even in the before times. In the before times, you would go and you'd find a supervisor who was also an employee of the Department of Homeland Security, and you'd say, hey, can you write up an administrative warrant to go? Already, that's not a great system because it's just your boss and they do it. What they're doing now is they are sending supervisors into the field. So then you stop someone on the street and say, what's your name? And you say, my name's Amy. And they say, great. And then the supervisor starts writing the administrative warrant right there for Amy, who they just met. If Amy tries to walk away, which she has a constitutional right to do, their position is you are now fleeing and they have probable cause to arrest you without a warrant. Let's say you go through all this.
How often does this happen today?
Again, it's very hard to know because one of the things that they have done
Anecdotally, are you hearing a lot?
all the time, and the reason that we don't know exactly how much is because one of the first things that was done is that every oversight agency was purged. For the people who work in the Freedom of Information Act office, they were fired during DOGE as an excuse like, hey, there's government shutdown, let's get rid of the people who are paying for us, they got rid of them. And so we sue all the time under Freedom of Information Act to get the data, and the government will get up in court, and I watched one of our fabulous lawyers on Suchi's team, which had been heroic, get up in court and say, we're trying to get information specifically on these ICE arrests at the courthouse, where they dismiss the case just to rearrest you. And they said, well, we can't actually give them any information because the office is too understaffed. And the judge is like, well, that's your decision, right? Like, you chose who to fire, and you're choosing to fire the people who can tell the public what's going on.
It's a catch-22, pass the mic.
I was gonna say, this is for an agency that is the highest funded agency in the history of our nation.
Talk about the money.
More than the FBI, more than any other agency, they have so much money to burn and they can't keep the stats. That's purposeful.
All right, I just want to tell you, we're a little tight on time, and we have not even gotten to our beautiful audience, and we are filled with really interesting people tonight. So we're gonna throw this out to the audience, but I wanna ask one question. We need news you can use. This is a horror show, and for those of us who do have the stomach to keep up with it, it's really amazing. It's mind-blowing, actually. But for those of us who are in and out, we need some ideas that we can go out of this place and say, you know what, I'm gonna call this person, or I'm gonna talk to this person, or I'm gonna write this, or I'm gonna send this, or I've got family that is grappling, or colleagues who are grappling. Give us some news you can use.
All right, here's a very practical thing that I hope everyone here will do and can do. Supreme Court issued a decision today in our case about metering at the border, which sounds technical, but it's very real. And the case effectively said this: the government's position was, it's true, people have a right to, if they have a well-founded fear of persecution, they have a right to show up at our port of entry and say, hey, if I go back home, I am gonna get killed. I would like asylum here. And the government said, okay, that's true, we have to give them that, but what? What if instead we put a border agent one step in front of the door, and we literally physically stopped them from getting to the door to ask? And we sued, and we won a trial, and it went to the Ninth Circuit, and we won the Ninth Circuit, and the Supreme Court took it up. And there was a bad decision today. And Justice Sotomayor read her dissent from the bench, which is for those who are Supreme Court followers, is a very significant thing when they do it. Here's how she closed her dissent. The consequences of today's decision are predictable. More people will die. More people will attempt to cross the border illegally, and some will make it while others will not. More people will be forced to walk along the US-Mexico border in dangerous conditions, trying to find a port that will inspect them. More people will turn back and be subjected to violence because of something they cannot or should not have to change about themselves, such as their race, religion, nationality, or political opinion. Because this is neither what Congress said, nor what its words permit, I respectfully dissent. This case turns on a statute. If there is a new Congress, or right now, Congress could, with one pen, change this in any bill.
So what are you telling us to do?
Right. The issue on immigration is that Congress members don't feel that this is the issue they need. Anytime someone writes a letter to the editor, or an op-ed, or calls their office, the Congress person knows about it. And anti-immigrant folks call their offices about 10 times as much as pro-immigrant ones. Everyone here has a voice that matters. Writing a letter to your member of Congress seems like a grain of sand on the beach. It is not. It matters. Making sure people don't look away and understand what is happening. After Minneapolis, the country was there, they saw it, they got it.
We are in Jeremy Raskin's district, let's say.
Right, but it's not about convincing someone it's a good idea.
Right.
It's about finding someone who believes it's a good idea and convincing them that this is the hill to die on. There's a must-pass bill, you get to insert what you want, changing the language to say that.
We're gonna write Congresspeople.
Right, Congresspeople. You're gonna organize your friends. You're gonna donate to support. I mean, neighborhoods, so I was in Mount Pleasant in my last meeting. Mount Pleasant has come together. They've raised money. They've hired a firm on retainer. There are people walking kids to school when their parents can't go out and walk them. They are doing Know Your Rights. It starts super locally. I mean, supporting people in your neighborhood who need that. And we can certainly help you figure out how to do that.
That's beautiful. I'm going to open this up to the audience, and I've got Lauren. Lauren, may I just say Lauren Anderson comes to us after a brilliant career at the FBI, and has a thing or two to say about.
And she's nice, though. I mean, I didn't like her when I first met her, but she's really great.
All right, and give it a
Despite
booming
the
voice. Give us a
FBI.
booming voice.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
here we go, Lauren.
2 points I'd like to make for everybody in the room. First of all, thank you for all 4 of you for everything you've done and everything you continue to do, because it matters. The second point I would like to make for those who don't know is among all of the people being scooped up are law enforcement officers. In the state of Maine, in Cumberland County, which is the county in which Portland sits, there have been 3 or 4 officers this year in uniform, including a recruit, who've been scooped off the street by ICE and detained, even though they have been fully vetted by the sheriff's office, by the state, as legal residents when they were hired. So we are also talking about law enforcement officers who are being taken off the streets by ICE. The second point that I will turn to Amy and Jeremy on is there is a new mandate and a new quota that has been put out to strip citizens of their citizenship at the rate of 1 to 200 people per month. Historically, only about 11 to 25 people have lost their citizenship because of criminal activity, violent criminal activity, and a reason. And
But there was never a plan to do such a thing, it just
Correct.
happened.
Correct. Well, a plan in terms of what it is. Right now, there is a quota of 1 to 200 people per month that the administration has ordered be stripped of their citizenship. And so I would like both Amy and Jeremy to comment on that, because that's another important thing for us to know. If you've raped somebody or killed somebody, you should be gone. You should absolutely be gone. But when you set a quota, just as they talked about earlier, quotas, there's not a lot of good in that, you know, coming out of an agency that was filled with statistics that needed to be required. We never had quotas of who to arrest. So I would ask you both to just
Excellent
speak
question.
on that issue.
Let her rip.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna comment on this concept of quotas. We have never seen that in our country before, and I think it's really important to just continue to say that's not real law enforcement. A quota is indiscriminate, we're gonna hit a number. It's not, this is a real threat, or this is a real problem, it's we're gonna hit a number. So what happens is the law enforcement or ICE resources are diffused, and instead of focusing, so what are you gonna do when you have a quota to hit? You're gonna avoid the hard stuff, right? You're gonna avoid that.
Ice out there.
Yeah, it might be. It's, you're gonna avoid the more difficult investigations and the things that really, you know, because real criminals are hard to catch, right? Takes time, resources. But if you're hitting quotas, you're not gonna do that deep dive. So what a quota does is the bad guys are getting away with everything, and they're picking up these little tiny things to hit the quota. That's my first point. Now you talk about the other one.
I'll talk about the DNS, but I want to say one thing about that, because I want to cheerlead for Suchi and her team. If you think about, in the before time, we were basically deporting people who touched our criminal justice system. When Trump came in and said, we're going to deport criminals, how do you get to those quota numbers? You would start with people who are already in our criminal justice system. But the truth is, those are the people we were deporting anyway.
Yeah.
And so if you have to get to a quota, you think, well, who else do we know where they are? And one of the wild things that they were doing in the first Trump administration, that they have tried to do again, is there's a decision from, it's a consent decree from years and years ago that says you can't throw kids in prison. And I don't have to explain to you why that is, because of course,
Keep it short.
Yeah.
Keep it short.
so the Trump administration said, we can't throw you, if you come here alone at 13, 12, we can't throw you in prison, we give you to a foster home or to a relative. But then they would show up on her 18th birthday and be like, happy birthday, you're now arrested, and throw people in prison. We sued, we won. They've tried to do it again, and so we had to go back to court a couple weeks ago, and for dozens of more kids who were now released, because that's how they're getting to the quota numbers. Because that's who they know where they are.
There's no more stark or disgusting an example than what you just said.
It's wild.
Okay, we're going to some, am I missing hands?
I didn't answer Dina's, I'm sorry.
Joan, and then the late, what's your name? No. Oh, he's admitting who's in the role as
Jeremy,
immigration.
if I could, where do you get your funding and how do we help?
Well, funding is a great way to help.
Where do they get their funding and how do we help?
It's a very tough, so the biggest funding source are large foundations. We actually run a cultural exchange business. We get some funding through the American immigration lawyers. We used to get corporate money that doesn't exist anymore. We just gotten our first government contract that was canceled day one. It is a movement under siege. We are holding up better than most, but the way that we've been able to survive has been individuals and family foundations, which was a tiny part of our budget and is now 30% of our budget. Because that was, as everything else has run away, people have stepped up in a way they never have before, and that's been transformational, and some of them are in their audience.
What do you find resonates with people?
I think people are starting to see, the problem with immigration in general has always been that people are rationally with us. When you look at polls, it's like 70% of the country wants comprehensive immigration reform, wants a path to legal status for people who aren't a threat. But emotionally, it doesn't feel like an issue that hits them. In moments it does. During Trump 1 with kids in cages, people said, whoa, kids in cages, right? And I think some of the travel ban stuff hit. I think now people are starting to see, despite the rhetoric that we're going after criminals, that there's a huge erosion of due process, of basic democratic principles, and the things that we thought protected us don't. And people are starting to see the humanity of who is actually getting wrapped up in this. And as a movement, I think one of the things that we have not done a good enough job of, is telling that story, to build that emotional connection.
But it's the inhumanity that people really, we're humans.
Yeah.
Any, okay, sorry. What's your name?
Eric?
Eric.
Yeah.
Immigration lawyer.
Yeah,
Retired.
three questions, I'll try to make them quick.
Description.
I'm a little embarrassed about the first one because I practiced for 23 years and 75% of my practice was removal defense, EI appeals, and petitions for review around different circuits in the country. I was always under the impression as a practitioner that getting an NTA was mandatory if you don't have status. So if you end up in Dili, you might have a couple miserable months, but eventually you're going to get a hearing. You might have no options, but at least you might have the option for voluntary departure. Maybe you can get an order of removal and work out, I'm forgetting the woman's name over there, a humanitarian case where you might get an order of supervision. And so the removal is an actual that you report, twice a year.
Okay, so the question.
Am I wrong about, but I'm sensing under the Trump era that a lot of people who are being detained might actually not be getting NTA. I mean, there's a backlog of
Okay,
3.2
this is an
million.
acronym we're gonna have explained, you're gonna re-ask the question, because not everybody could
Yep.
hear, and they'll give you an answer.
So the question is about whether you can get a notice to appear, which is called an NTA, in court. I'm gonna obliquely answer half of that by going a step further.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell one very, very quick story. Ilya Chernov was a Russian dissident. He was 21 years old, and was Alexei Navalny, the dissident. In Russia, Ilya was a follower of his, and Ilya put up protest material in support of Alexei Navalny at military recruitment sites in Russia, which is not a smart thing to do. If you care for your safety, they came to his house, he had to flee, got his way to Mexico, used the app, came in, was thrown in prison. He had, an open and shut asylum case. We represented him and won. And if you win, you would think you would go home. If you're accused of murder and you win, you walk out the door that day. But the government decided they didn't want to release him because the the laws that you think exist in court don't exist in immigration court. And it took the advocacy of hundreds and hundreds of people to get him out. And that's what you're seeing now a little bit, right? So what is the law? It's already bad. What are they stretching, and what are they just downright ignoring? And I think that's the reality.
It's not discretionary. It's
I
not
have-
discretionary.
I have,
not to-
well, and we've got other questions, but let me just add one
We're
thing.
gonna wrap in 1 minute, so make this super fast, we're gonna take
The
one more
super
question.
fast thing is, if you are so miserable or dying or ill in detention, you're not gonna wait around for
Right.
court, you're gonna
That's
agree to
not the
leave, and that's part of the strategy.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I don't
I
wanna
have
take
answer,
away
I
from
apologize.
others.
Next,
I-
question. And you had a hand up.
Hi, I was just gonna,
What is your name, please?
Catherine Suarez, if it's true, the reporting we read that the business community is lacking workers and we need workers, where is the business community on this?
Where's the business
Where's
community?
the voice and where's their money?
Where's the business community voice and money if the conversation is also about the lack of workers?
So part of the strategy, again, death by a million cuts, you know, let's stem the tide of immigration, refugee, asylum. Let's shut down consulates throughout the world so people can't even get a visa to come in, right? Because you have to go to a US consulate. Let's change the laws through, or the policies through extreme vetting, so it takes so long to get through the vetting system to come in, even though the vetting system is extreme the way it is. So in terms of the business community, the Trump administration has done a remarkable job of bullying people into submission, and the business community is kind of scared. You know, the prairie dog mentality, right? You've got a field of prairie dogs, and the one who sticks its head out of the hole gets it shot off. Well, that's kind of what's happening now. The council and our bar association, among others, are working with chambers to try to affect reform. The chamber actually stood up and sued on this recent H-1B $100,000 issue. But I will say it's really difficult to get businesses
The US
involved.
Chamber did that?
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, US chambers,
Chamber
Chamber of Commerce,
Right
yeah.
across from the White House.
So, and I will tell you, I work with a lot of local chambers, and the local chambers are all pro-immigration because they understand the economic need, not only in agriculture, but in manufacturing and STEM. You know, you look at any
All across the
university,
service center.
all across. So, they know, but everyone's scared. And that's the country we're in right now, everyone's scared. So it's a challenge to get people involved. They are slowly, and you know, I have some clients that are suing the Trump administration with cases, and the council has done a good job as well. But I tell you, cowardice is the prevailing wisdom.
And the most important thing is to stay courageous. And I'm going to say that this has been a remarkable evening. And I want to thank Suchi, and I want to Akosua, and I want to thank Jeremy and Amy. This has ignited a lot, and probably be a lot of conversation afterwards. There's so many amazing people in this room, so I hope you get a chance to meet each other, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.